Welcome, everybody, to this special episode of Command Combat Battle Reports. Today, we complete the Blood, Guts, and Glory Tank Aces campaign as American and German forces clash in the Lorraine Valley near Aracourt. Each of the tank aces has been moving up one of the three different paths to become the top tank ace. The American forces have been Lance on the green path, Jeff on the red path, and Michael on the blue path. Michael has gotten 13 points with his Easy 8s, Jeff has gotten 16 points with his Hellcats, and Lance has gotten 36 points with his 76s. Which makes sense because he's an old war veteran himself. The Americans have a total of 7 points and the Germans have a total of 9 points. They're ahead, but the Americans can still catch up with them in this final battle royale. The German players are Dave Martinez on the green path, David Dandridge on the red path, and Chris Rivera on the blue path. Chris has 32 points with his mixed force, David Dandridge has 30 points with his Panzer IV Swarm, and Dave Martinez has 15 points with his Panthers. The German players are formulating their plan. We caught up with David Dandridge to see what plan they came up with.
Here's our basic plan. It's actually going to be kind of reactive. We're checkerboarded on the table, and I'm in one corner, and we're figuring that I can hold that corner with my upgrade anti-tank guns. If they come in there, I've got so many guns I should be able to blow them away. Then I'm going to hold the rest of my Panzer IV horde, waiting to see how things develop. The player on the opposite center, German player, is going to try to look and see where the Americans are going and try to strike at them, while the third player that has our heaviest tanks is going to try to come in and hammer them. After things start to develop, hopefully engaging the Americans, then I'll bring my force in and basically hammer and anvil them. We'll have to see how it goes.
The American players are plotting as well. Let's see what plan they're hatching. So we're a little bit behind, but I think we can catch up here. And so our plan is, rather than spreading ourselves out, we're all going to concentrate on Chris down on the bottom center. All three of us are just going to nail him down at the bottom there, and then we'll consolidate, and then as a united force, go out from there. Whoever's closest to us probably just attack that one. We figure if we just go after one at a time, then we have 3 against 1 type of odds. We'll see how it works. The fight will be taking place over the 6x8 table with objectives scattered throughout. The scenario is out of the fog. Both armies have gotten lost in the fog and have come out in this checkerboard formation. The Germans are here, and the Americans are here. Each has an objective in the center of their zones worth victory points each turn to whomever is closest to them. Also, special events can happen to players near them as well. Our commentators will each have their own sections, with Skip on the left, John in the center, and Howard on the right. Now to see who the first player is. It looks like it'll be the Germans.
Dave's moving his Panzer IVs forward in masse.
Chris isn't messing around. He's jumping right onto his longtime rival Michael, and he's guarding against Jeff with his Stugs. And he immediately takes out 2 of Michael's Easy 8s. This is really looking familiar.
David's Panthers are taking positions on the hills and near the objective in search of his opponents.
And now on the American turn, Lance's 76 Shermans jump out of the woods and
into my territory. He's right there on David's flanks. He's on the left side. They're my tanks now.
Jeff Shermans are racing away from Dave's oncoming mass. He's crossing the river, and miraculously, none of them get bogged. They're right in the face of the Stugs, making sure they can see them through the fog. They fire. Both of them are destroyed.
That was my territory, too. Everyone get out of my territory. Alright, so Michael raced up with his AZ-8s and took 2 of Chris's Panthers, and Lance hit David's flank and destroyed 1 of his Panthers.
Hey, that was mine!
Eat it, Skipper.
Oh, huge upset on the right. A V-1 rocket fired landed in the wrong spot. David had most of his Panzers tightly together, and 3 of them were taken out by friendly fire. They look pretty mad as they race forward for revenge, while some of the others go for cover behind the trees, and there's still others headed over to the center.
Into my territory, Chris's remaining Panther manages to stay in the fight, and he surrounds the rushing Easy 8s. His remaining Panzers swing around to fight Jeff Shermans crossing the river.
Dave's Panthers line up to fire on Lance's Shermans. And they take 2 of them out. Then one of the Panthers pulls down on the hill in the stormtrooper move.
Michael brought on his reserves and is running right up into Chris's face, while Jeff is turning around. He's changing his mind on giving Chris the pinch and going back after David?
Putting him back in my territory. He shoots with his Hellcats and all of his tanks, taking out 2 Panzers and stunning 2 more. A hit to the Germans, but it could have been a lot worse.
Up on the left side, the Americans scoot around to the back of the Panthers, but only managed to stun one of them.
Michael just got major revenge on Chris by blowing away all of his tanks around the hill.
Wait, hold on everyone. Yankee Joe has something to say on the field.
The fog is finally starting to lift. Tanks are going to be able to see each other from any part of the field and fire if it's in range.
That makes things interesting on my front as Chris comes in with his Panzers and Stugs on one side and David with his Panzers on the other. They've got Jeff pinched on his flank. They fire and take out 2 of the Shermans and both Hellcats. That's a familiar sight for Jeff. He's always losing his tank ace.
Dave Martinez moves his tank ace Herr Gruber onto the flank of Lance's tank ace. He fires, and only causes him to bail out. The second time Lieutenant Lance has been bailed out of his tank without being destroyed. His tank ace is lucky, but the rest of the Sherman 76s on the table have been destroyed.
But it's okay because Lance has his reserves, and they're smashing into David's tanks, but they're not able to really do anything to them.
It's the same story over here. Jeff swung around the hill and missed everything.
My front did something, though. With the fog cleared, Michael was able to get a shot off and took out one of Chris's Panzers from the rear.
And David continues to smash into Jeff, bringing up his flanking Panzers onto the hill. They fire and take out one of his 2 remaining tanks.
Chris seems to think he's got it under control there, and he's turning around to face Michael.
Up in the corner, David's brought in his reserves, those being the heavy Panzer 470s. Those are heavy tank hunters. But they only managed to bail out one of the tanks. But then they got an even bigger break. Lieutenant Lance's own tank is hit by 2 of the Panthers, but still only manages to get bailed. Lance is lucky all around.
Lucky like I got with your mama.
Come over here and say that, John.
You want to go
I'm
at
gonna
me?
shove your mouth
you
so
want to
far
go?
down your
Come
throat.
on.
I'm gonna
You are the
take
dumbest person I've ever seen trying to do a
shove
battle
your
report.
mouth
Have you
so
been
far
joking
down
your
your
life?
throat.
You're
I'm gonna
trying to
take you
do
To hell with them. Okay, so while our commentators go off to have their own battle, I'll keep you updated on this one. Lieutenant Lance has gotten back into his tank. He maneuvers around behind Herr Gruber and fires on his rear. Michael, meanwhile, is moving toward the center. Jeff manages to destroy one of David's Panzers on the hill, causing the other one to retreat, and he destroys another one. He might just hold off the Panzer horde. Michael, meanwhile, destroys the last of Chris's tanks in the center. He's also sent his tank ace up the left to help Lance. So here's how the overall table looks. Let's look at the tactical board. The American players started after Chris, but Lance got distracted by Dave Martinez. Michael and Jeff went after Chris, but Jeff went back after David Dandridge when he thought he saw an opportunity, leaving Michael to take on Chris alone. At this point, it's very interesting. Look at this. The players on both sides have paired up against the opponents they have had throughout the campaign. Then, Chris thought he took out Michael, and turned on Jeff. Between he and David Dandridge, they whittled Jeff down, but Michael came back with his reserves and finished Chris out. So he's out of the game. Dave Martinez has also brought in 2 Panzer 470s, and his ace is playing leapfrog with Lieutenant Lance, each trying to get in behind the other. David Dandridge, meanwhile, sends half his force to help the center. Back at Dave Martinez, and the Panther misses, but the 470s destroy the reserve Shermans. Lieutenant Lance, who has survived numerous hits, fails his morale and runs from the table. That takes out the next player from the list. Lieutenant Lance is the second player to be removed from the game, but his ace has survived, so he'll get points for that. And Jeff is also removed as David Dandridge destroys the last of his tanks. Michael is the only remaining American player against 2 German players. He's up against the 2 Davids. David Martinez has his 470s and his Panther tank ace in his corner, while David Dandridge still has a lot of his Panzer IV swarm on the other side of the table. Michael is covered by the fog right now, but that could change at any moment. He's got 2 objectives and his opponents have 3. Michael has a lot to consider, The fog has rolled in, giving him cover, but which way does he go? Does he take on the heavy tanks in the top left, or the medium tank swarm on the right? So Michael decides to move up the middle toward the only remaining unclaimed objective with his tank platoon and second in command. And his tank ace is going to hold off Martinez all on its own. He fires and bails out Martinez's tank ace. On the German turn, Dandridge crosses the river and covers the middle objective. That gives them 4 objectives to Michael's 2. Martinez brings his 470s up onto the hill, but with a thick fog, no one can see Michael's tank ace. Michael continues to push down the middle, and he brings up his tank ace on the side. He fires. It's a hit! He has taken down Martinez's tank ace. Herr Gruber is burning. If Michael can keep pushing like this, he may just win the game for the Americans single-handedly. Martinez brings the 2 470s off the hill to search for Michael's tank ace, but the fog is too thick for him to see anything, so they pull back to avoid getting flanked. Dandridge, meanwhile, is holding on to the 3 objectives he already has. Michael now rushes around the plowed field and gets onto Martinez's flank. He fires and bails out one of the 470s. In the center, they continue to push forward, sticking close to the road so they can move faster in the fog. The civilians go running in panic. Yes, just like David Dandridge is showing. Michael wants to shoot at the Germans, but it's too far to see in the fog. Martinez's 470 gets operational again, and they go after Michael. And they finally take out Michael's tank ace. Dandridge, meanwhile, pulls back into the fog and behind the woods, evidently trying to lure Michael in. Michael does not take the bait, but takes the objective and turns 2 tanks to guard the river. He also sends his second in command to take on the 470s and manages to bail one of them. The remaining 470 goes after Michael's tank, but cannot see it in the fog. These Germans just cannot see through fog. Dandridge, meanwhile, is trying to decide what to do. Michael's given him a tough choice. He decides to keep his tanks behind the trees and let the ones across the river fire. And they take out the Sherman that was holding the objective. Michael brings up another Sherman to take its place, using the burning wreckage to guard its flank. While the one on the corners rushes up to Martinez and destroys it. With the other 470 bailed, it looks like Martinez is out of the battle. That leaves only Michael against Dandridge. This is going to get exciting. But we've run out of time. The final score is Germans 29, Americans 19. Let's see what the players thought of the results. Well, unfortunately, it didn't work. We kind of got distracted. Michael went through with the plan. He went right after Chris. I did sort of go after the plan, but then I got distracted. I really thought I could get David when I saw a bunch of his guys kind of clumped up there. I was turned around, went right after them. That didn't exactly work. I got spanked, probably deservedly so. I know that Lance got distracted by some of the bigger tanks up on the top of the board. So basically our plan fell apart right from the beginning, and we pretty much got hammered sort of piecemeal. But good for Michael for surviving till the end.
It worked! it not quite the way we expected, but it did work well. The Americans really engaged on the Germans on that far side. They wanted to stay away from my corner of the table because they were afraid of all my anti-tank guns that were waiting for them. Part of the Americans got really engaged with the German heavy tanks. They crushed the German on the far side of the table for me, but while they were looking that way, suddenly the Panzer IV hordes came out. We were able to run over the rest of them, creating that sandwich between myself and all of the other remaining Germans, therefore bringing us victory.
So it was a German team victory, but what about the individual scores? Jeff came in last with a sad showing of 17 points. Michael, the hero of the last game, had only 19. Dave Martinez had one more with 20 points. David Dandridge and Chris tied with 38 points. And coming in at 39 is the American badass himself, Lance Block, with a whopping 39 points. So Lance Block is the new tank ace. You can also see Lance talk about some of his amazing war stories by clicking on the link shown on the screen. Lance served in Vietnam and had some really incredible experiences, so take a look. That will do it for us here at Game Empire, Land of 1,000 Games. We hope you've enjoyed our Blood, Guts, and Glory series. To see more of the battles from this campaign, click on one of the links below. Also, click the subscribe link or button and watch our mini battle reports on Command Combat Battle Reports. Happy gaming, everybody!
Fire! fight, 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 fight.